Meumbwa imevaa ngozi ya kondoo. Wamevalia ngozi ya kondoo, ndani yao ni gui.
Could not have lost this election if it wasn't for three people. Three. The first one is Junet Mohammed. The second one is Joe Musheru. And the third one is Professor Makau Mutua.
Key players in the Azimio camp speak exclusively to NTV on where the game was lost in the August presidential election. How Raila lost.
The other day, Edwin Sifuna called out Junet Mohammed for stealing the money Uhuru gave Azimio to pay agents during the 2022 election. Now, as we speak, Junet has fired back by saying this, and I quote, "Press statement for immediate release. I wish to respond to Senator Edwin Sifuna, the ODM Secretary General who moonlights for former President Uhuru Kenyatta within our party and who has challenged me to explain why agents in the 2022 general election were neither paid nor represented at their designated polling stations. The answer is simple, clear and verifiable. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta released the funds meant for election agents to his blood brother Muhoho Kenyatta. Muhoho Kenyatta then appointed one Mr. Patrick Mburu to take charge of the recruitment and payment of agents. Mr. Mburu presented himself as an IT expert, claiming he had the capacity to detect and prevent any manipulation of results by the IEBC. To date, Mr. Mburu remains an aide of Uhuru Kenyatta. Just this past weekend, Mburu traveled to Nigeria in the company of Uhuru Kenyatta and Kalonzo Musyoka. Clear evidence that he is not a peripheral figure in these matters. Around the time, Muhoho Kenyatta operated from an office in Westlands that was so restricted that even Raila Odinga, the party's presidential candidate, could not access it freely. Long story short, Junet anasema si yeye alikula pesa ya agents, but when it's all said and done, we can bet Junet Mohammed regrets putting out that statement, because all he did was set himself up perfectly for this rebuttal by Satyabao Lekanchori. And I quote, "Waislamu pia kumbe ni waongo hivi. Number one, Patrick Mburu never presented himself as an IT expert. It is Joe Musheru who ran this con, and when I protested, you, and by you he's referring to Junet Mohammed because this is a response to him, you and Makau Mutua strongly came to his defense. Number two, it is you, Junet, who kept Raila away from the command center for reasons which were best known to you and which are now obvious to all. It is ridiculous to suggest that Raila had restricted access to the command center. Yes, he rarely came, but not because he couldn't. When I insisted that Baba must join us and get a hands-on feeling on what is happening, you, Junet, told me that Baba was too busy and could not be involved or bothered by such small matters as the issue of agents. Number three, when as ODM we tried to set up a backup agents management system and tallying center, you, Junet Mohammed, frustrated it and had it dismantled, almost leading to a fallout between Raila and his loyal lieutenant and fellow political detainee Dr. Oduor Ongwen, an executive director of ODM who was also my deputy. Number four, Raila Odinga appointed you minority leader because he was planning to sell out and needed a broker, and you happen to be a damn fine one. As broker, you have carried your assignment with diligence and dedication and have managed to sell your boss to his detriment and demise. Your job is done. The rest of us are not for sale. Number five, you, Junet, of all people, cannot talk of 2022. More to follow. I, for one, believe this is the last time Junet Mohammed is going to serve in parliament, because the supporters of Raila Odinga now know exactly who made them lose in 2022. And it wasn't Wafula Chebukati, nor was it Jose Camargo, like many suggested. No. Instead, it was Junet Mohammed. Those funds meant for agents were critically needed. And this greed of a few people like Junet Mohammed is what made it possible for robbery to take place. Watu walienda kupiga kura in some polling stations. Hakuna agent wa Azimio. In fact, walikuwa wamedanganywa. Mukifika hivi in the morning, kuna pesa inaingia. After voting is finished and counting is about to start, kuna pesa inaingia. And then after counting all the votes, the final amount inaingia kwa account. Do you know by the time they're going to count, hakuna pesa ilikuwa imeingia. So some polling stations hakukuwa na mtu wa Azimio, na kama alikuwa njaa. So huyo ni mtu hata ungemwambia wewe shika hii 200, wewe enda kula biscuit pale kando, he or she would do so. You cannot steal money meant for agents. And I'm hoping the current opposition is listening into what Ole Kanchori is saying, because he was the chief Azimio agent at Bomas of Kenya. Anywho, let's see what Kenyans next have to say about this Junet saga, and I quote, Zach said, Kenyans voted overwhelmingly for Baba, but the people close to him betrayed him for their own stomachs. These parasites should be punished for denying us the leadership that Kenyans deserved. Georgie said, very true. I can attest that I was a staunch supporter of Raila in Kiambu, but to my surprise, there was no Azimio agent in my station. Alan Keys said, gloves off. That silly person with the name Junet should know his job of brokering will end with that bleep ODM. Just as Sila said, it's only someone foolish who can abuse abuse another person who freely gave a cool 500 million to finance a campaign where he is not a candidate. Shame on you, Junet. Of course, this is in response to Junet insulting Uhuru Kenyatta over the weekend. Sina Gina said, Junet is cooked, fried and chewed. What remains is to swallow him. He is a done deal. Should not talk anywhere in Luo Nyanza and in Kenya. Perhaps he can go back to Somalia and start fresh. That's a bit rude and uncalled for.
Now, the ghosts surrounding how millions of shillings meant to pay Azimio agents in the 2022 general election have now come back to haunt ODM officials as they trade barbs over how the funds were spent. It has now emerged that retired President Uhuru Kenyatta contributed $500 million shillings for paying Azimio agents, money that reportedly vanished without serving its intended purpose. And as our reporter, affairs reporter, Chris Thyra reports, the chickens are indeed coming home to roast.
The confessions among ODM leaders on how the $500 million shillings contributed by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and meant to pay Azimio agents in the 2022 general election vanished into thin air started on Saturday when ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna launched a scathing attack against minority leader in the National Assembly, Junet Mohammed, accusing him of misusing Uhuru'S money, which costed Azimio under the late Raila Odinga the presidency.
Wengine walikula pesa ya Uhuru Kenyatta sawasawa. Mimi najua kama katibu mkuu, pesa nyingi ambayo tulifanyia campaign ilikuwa inatoka kwa Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta. Alitusupport. Mshenzi mmoja ametambua kwamba kuna ubaya ya pesa ya Uhuru Kenyatta. Nataka niulize Junet. Wewe Junet, pesa ya Uhuru ilianza kuwa mbaya siku gani?
But in a quick rejoinder defending himself, the Suna East lawmaker Junet Mohammed claimed that former President Uhuru Kenyatta released the funds meant for election agents to his blood brother Muhoho Kenyatta. Muhoho then appointed one Mr. Patrick Mburu to take charge of the recruitment and payment of agents. Mburu presented himself as an IT expert, claiming he had the capacity to detect and prevent any manipulation of results by IEBC. According to Junet, to date, Mburu remains an aide of Uhuru Kenyatta, and just this past weekend, he traveled to Nigeria in the company of Uhuru and Kalonzo Musyoka, which he described as a clear evidence that he is not a peripheral figure in these matters.
Unatupeleka Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta alishindwa kufanya baba president akiwa na kila kitu. Alikuwa na military, alikuwa na polisi, alikuwa na army, na prison, hata kanjo alikuwa naye. Alishindwa.
Wewe ulikuwa unakula pesa ya Uhuru badala ulipe agents, ukaacha hawa kina Wamunyoro wakatupiga 10-0. Sasa hii tunalia huko nje. Kama sio wewe Junet tungekuwa kwa serikali. So mimi huwezi nitisha bwana.
If he knew that the agents were not paid 3.5 years down the line, why was he quiet? Why was he quiet? And what is what he's talking about is going to help the people of ODM. What remedy will that thing do?
However, all the blame lies at the doorstep of Junet Mohammed if the statement by the late Raila Odinga's chief agent in 2022 is anything to go by. According to lawyer Sitabao Olekanchuri, Junet Mohammed should not talk about 2022. In his statement, Kanchuri argues, and I quote, "How dare you open a can of worms you know very well will eat you alive?" Raila Odinga himself knew that Junet Mohammed almost single-handedly cost him the 2022 election, and he told me as much. The only reason Raila retained and even promoted Junet was because he was planning to sell out and needed a broker, and Junet happens to be the best broker money can buy. End quote. Former Mukurweini MP Kabando Kabando also trailed his guns on Junet, claiming that he's not honest. In his social media accounts, Kabando states, "You all boisterous and touchable guys were transacting not Baba victory. Chickens are now coming home to roast. Open servers was a deception." End quote. With senior counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi adding to the twist, and I quote, crazy world. Junet tells us now how the Jubilee government messed up the polling agents of Raila by eating money meant for the agents as they were confident of a deep state doing the needful. When things turned south, they pivoted to 4 judges of the Supreme Court to save face. After Azimio la Umoja lost the presidency to President William Ruto, both Junet and mining CS Hassan Joho went into hiding, avoiding the public for almost a year, only to resurface when the late Raila Odinga and President Ruto were finalizing the deal on the broad-based government. To date, majority of Azimio supporters still believe that Junet Mohammed, who was a very close ally of Raila Odinga, has some questions to answer on what really transpired on the agents aspect.